Okay, so before we move on to the next step in pre-processing, at this point, I'm gonna go through a tutorial on how to do some batch processing because we're not gonna need to have um, the each subject's data processed up to the point of segmentation before we can move on to the next step, which is going to be the Dartel spatial normalization step. Because we're going to need all the RC files for each subject, these files here, all right, which are produced, if we remember from the segment tutorial, which were produced from the segment step for each subject. We're going to need all of this in order to proceed with the spatial normalization to MNI template for all subjects. And again, we will go through more of this theory in class, but here I'm just showing you the procedure for how to do this. But so to get all the subjects up to this point, so that you get RC files, and IY, and we also need these parameter files, the deformation fields, okay, for each subject, the forward and inverse. To get everyone up to this level, everyone's data up to this level, you can do the follow all the tutorials that I have brought you guys through so far, one person, one subject at a time. But obviously, if you have 40 subjects or 30 over subjects, it might be more productive to set up a batch approach so that you can have things running in the background and while you're busy yourself and use your time for other things. So I'm going to show you how to use the batch interface at this point. It's pretty easy. If you have up to this point been following the way I did things, is like whenever I set up a pre-processing step, I always, once I'm done setting it up, I'll save like the mat file right at the end, the batch file and all that. So actually, it's all just a matter of loading these and then changing the respective data so that you can pre-process everything for every subject, the same way, a pipeline for every subject. So here to do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and open a batch editor. You can just directly click it here. And once you do that, you'll see that this is kind of like the similar interface as you get when you click on any one of those tools in the menu on the left. But it's just blank because we haven't selected any module to run yet. All right. Now to do this, to set up this batch, you can go ahead and if you click SPM in the menu here, you'll see that there are all these tools, all these modules are already listed there. So like, for example, if you do realign, reslice, and estimate and reslice, actually you can go ahead and click here and it will be equivalent to you clicking this button over here, right? There's no difference. And similarly, if you wanted to do slice time, that's a temporal module, and if you click slice time, it will add a slice time module here, which is the same as this here. All right, so all the tools here are really all kind of also duplicated over here. In fact, more of them are listed here. So this is kind of like the more advanced usage from here. Here is like the quick and dirty way to do it. Here is if you really want to set up a pipeline and stuff. Okay, for us though, we are not going to use this kind of like clicking, setting up things through the whole thing using this menu item. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to load the stuff that I've already saved for subject Y01. And to do that, I click the open button and it's going to ask me if I want to replace it. And I say, yes, continue, please do so. And I'm just going to go into the subject folder that I had. And you see all the batch processes that I've done before are now all here. So all I need to do is to kind of load them in the order that I wanted, in the order that I ran them. So I first did realign, estimate, and reslice, followed by slice timing, followed by co-registering the T2 to the EPI, co-registering the T1 to the T2, and then segmenting. All right. So the order is very important here. So we're gonna make sure you follow this order if you've been following with me up to this point. And when you click done, you'll see that it will load up all of the pre-processing steps that you did before in the order that you wanted, in the order that you specified. Now, so remember, this is with respect to subject Y01, right? So if we click on the first module, which is realign, estimate, and reslice, the very first thing we selected was Y01's original Series 23 image, all right? And then Y01's Rep2 image, okay? And then if you go on to the next slice timing, this is just reviewing. This is now going to have the Y01 Rep1, but with the R in front, okay? That's what we apply the slice timing on. And then for session 2 is the RY01, but for Rep 2. And then for the co-registration, we use the resulting A prefix file, which is the first volume of the first run, the subject's T2. And then the T2 is next kept still while we move the T1. And then finally, we segment the T1 into the various images and also resulting in the deformation fields that we want and also the RC files that we want. So this is all set up for subject Y01 right now, and I'm just going to show you quickly how we can very quickly just use this and do the same for Y02. So to do that, I'm going to change things by just changing the critical files, right? So these were all set up for Y01. So if I want to change it for Y02, all I have to do is go to specify again and just change it. So to deselect the original files. To do that, what you do is you go to the bottom, don't click anything yet, but just scroll down. Again, hold shift and click the last file. That should deselect everything. And then I'm going to navigate to my Y01's folder. Right now I'm in Y02, and so the point here is I want to do the same thing, but for Y01. I haven't done that yet because you see that I have no Y01 data set up. So at this point, I'm going to work through back to my file system, my folder here, and I'm just going to create Y02. All right. So it's the same thing. So in my subjects folder for the Nifty, raw Nifty, I'm going to create a Y02. And then I'm going to need to, remember, convert the DICOMs from the IMAs to the Nifties. So I'm going to need to apply DCM to Nifty, DICOM to Nifty on this folder. And if you recall how to do that, it's very easy. Just go over to MRI Crow GL. I'm going to open that here. Then I'm going to do import, convert DICOM to Nifty, and I'm going to say I don't want it to be compressed, I want it to be the uncompressed version, and I want to select the folder now, and I'm just going to navigate to my rep folder. Here, data, source IMA, subjects, and Y02. I'm just going to select that and open it, and DICOM to Nifty is just going to go ahead and get that working. All right, and it's done. So just like the previous step, we're going to move all the Nifty folders and the JSON outputs, all right? We're going to move them to the Y02 folder here. Okay. And that should put them here. So when I'm back here, I will now be able to select Y02. And I'm going to, remember this is motion correction, so I want to do it on the first run and the second run and the originals, not the MoCo motion corrected derived from the Siemens scanner. And you'll note that it is noted at Rep 3, it's labeled Rep 3 and Rep 4 here, It's not important. It was due to the counterbalancing labeling when we were running the experiment. This is still the same as this is still the run 1 and run 2 for this subject. All right. So we want to do rep 3. So I'm gonna use the filtering now. Rep 3, and it's gonna be series underscore 31, and I'm going to do 150 volumes, and I'm just going to very quickly select everything here. Okay, just to check, this is now YO2 Rep 3 Series 31. And then I'm going to do the same thing, change the data that's being used for session 2. And I'm going to go to this subjects, Rep 4. It's going to be series 33, and it's going to be 1 to 150. All right, so this is set. Then I'm going to not play yet, all right, because I want to complete everything, okay? Now, here's where this is really cool here. If you set things up this way, what SPM will do is that it's smart enough to say, like, okay, you set up the reslice and estimate to operate on this now YO2 subjects file, right? So do I have to, if I were to do it the way I did it before with the previous tutorial, you would have to select all the RYO2 images, right? But it hasn't been generated yet, right? We haven't actually run the realign, estimate, and reslice yet. So at this point, we don't have anything to select. There are other ways to do this, but here's a neat way that I want to show you here for now, is you can go to highlight the 150 files here as you would for slice timing for session 1, for run 1. And you see this button here called dependency. What you want to do is you want to click dependency, and it will ask you, did you want to apply it on one of the images that you were involved in the realign step? And the answer is yes. We want to do it on the resliced images, the ones with the R in front, and we want to do it for session 1. Okay, and so this will replace the slice time session 1 field with the output from the session 1 output from the realign step. That would be this step. So in other words, this step will produce RYO2 images once you run it, and automatically it will then be fed into this field here for slice timing. Okay, so you don't have to select everything all over again. And similarly for this, now it's run 2, and you want to choose the resliced images for session 2. So you've got the session 1 resliced images and session 2 resliced images selected. You don't have to select all the files and volumes. You just have to specify them once in the realign. Okay, so it's cool this way, the way SPM works, and it will apply the same thing, the prefix of A in front after it's applied its slice timing, and all the other parameters are the same. And then when we go to the co-registration step, we're gonna say we want a dependency. Yeah, we want to use the slice timing first session volume, and this will call the first volume of the first run, all right, for the reference image. And then here we don't have a choice. There's no dependency to rely on here, because up to this point we haven't told SPM where YO2's T2 is located. So we're gonna have to do this manual selection, and to do that, it's not hard at all. We just go ahead. We have to deselect YO1's T2, and then we replace it with YO2's T2. And that's there. And then go on to the next one, where we're going to use YO2's code T2, which is the same file, remember, all right? But it's now being co-registered. So it's not going to be renamed. It's going to be the same name, okay? But because we applied it after the first co-registration step, this time it's going to be co-registered to the EPI. And the T1 also, we have to tell SPM, because doesn't know where it is at this point in time. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this up. This is really easy. And this is done. And then for the segment, what we want to put in here is a dependency. It are the co-registered images from this step. All right. Actually, I'm thinking like if you wanted to, for this T2, you could also choose the co-registered images from the first step. This is for co-registering T1 to T2, and because the T2 was entered already in the first co-registration step, you can use it as a dependency of the co-registered images. All right, so that will kind of cut down on the number of times you have to select T2 again. Okay, so at this point, all of our settings have been set up, have been specified for Y02, and before running though, usually, and as always, whatever step that we apply, eventually we want to save it into the batch.mat file. And in this case, I'm going to, if it will let me, now we're going to do it again, save it, and expand it. And I'm going to go to the Y02s folder. And because this is the whole set, it's not any one single preprocessing, I'm just going to say this is Y02s batch preproc. And I'm going to qualify that as batch preproc 1, for lack of a better name, because there are other subsequent preprocessing steps that we would want to be doing later on. And for the purposes of this tutorial, I want to distinguish it. But ordinarily, once you're familiar, you might want to combine all your preprocessing steps into just one batch. But for now, just for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to separate it so that people don't get too confused. All right, just going to save it. So now we have a batch preproc, which is the summary of all the different preprocessing batches that we did for Y01. We kind of combined them into this one big one in Y02. And then we also tweak things a little so that it would operate on Y02 files rather than on Y01 files. And once this is done, you can very easily just click play, and it will, SPM will just run through all of these sequences, and then you can take a break, come back maybe in about 15-20 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer, and all the Y02 files should be processed as well. A word of warning, when you do things this way, SPM will still show you the results. For example, you can see the motion correction's been done already, all right, and then also for the co-registration and things like that, it will show all these information on the graphics window. But if you step away, and you don't pay attention, you might not have the chance to visually inspect things and maybe kind of like highlight problem data, right? So it's always important when you come back, whatever, you might have closed MATLAB, or you might have, kind of closed your computer or something, that to come back and to always open your files to visually using display or check reg, or you look at the RP text files by plotting them, because you know that they are the 6 columns of motion. You can use Excel to plot them and stuff to see to kind of visualize for yourself the motion again. And when you do all of that, to make sure that you visually inspect the quality of your data. You don't want to just assume that when I run this batch that everything is going to be okay. I can tell you for sure that at least in your sample data, there are motion issues for some subjects, and you should be aware of it in your project, in your analysis. All right, so I'm just going to let it run, and when it's done, Y02's image will be processed up to the point of the segment, and then we want to do the same for Y03, 001, 002, and 003. This is the current method of batching that I want to share with you guys for now. Of course, there are better ways or more expansive ways to do the batching, but I will probably show that to you later on in the course. But for now, just for the sake of these early tutorials, we're just gonna use this method of batching to speed things up just a little bit, but without adding too much confusion yet.